Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. Ole Miss thrived in Lane Kiffin's first year in Oxford by winning 4 of their last 5 games, including an Outback Bowl victory over Indiana. Now, with one of the best quarterbacks in the country returning and an improving defense, the Rebels could be in store for something much better in 2021. So guys, again, welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, here to predict and analyze Ole Miss's schedule and record for this 2021 college football season. As always, make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and also make sure to check out everything down in the description below. Go sign up for our expert picks on our website, thegridironexpert.com. Sign up for those before the season starts. And also make sure to go check out Prize Picks. Use our link and promo code GRIDIRON over there. Start playing today, right before the season starts. And we'll be out here giving you free picks and tips all year long if you do in fact sign up. So make sure to go do that. Everything down in the description below. So let's take a look at Ole Miss. Lane Kiffin, guys, a team that went just 5-5 last year, but took the college football world by storm with one of the most electric offenses in the nation. And that's where we start our analysis today. The key for Ole Miss this year is their offense, led by Matt Corral, a guy who wasn't even a starter for the Rebels a few years ago, came in under Lane Kiffin's offense, earned that starting job, and threw for over 3,300 yards, 29 touchdowns, and 14 interceptions. Now, everybody wants to freak out about the 14 interceptions. Yes, Corral needs to cut down on those, but let's keep in mind he played 10 games. 11 of those 14 interceptions came in 2 games. Threw 6 against Arkansas, threw 5 against LSU. 11 of the 14 came in just 2 games, which means he threw 3 in the span of 8. This guy's got a lot of talent. And yes, he does lose his star wide receiver in Elijah Moore and Kenny Yeboah. He loses his top 2 pass catchers there. They have Jonathan Mingo coming back. And they have Jerrion Ealy leading the way at running back after rushing for 745 yards and 9 touchdowns. This team averaged 344.9 passing yards per game last year. That was 7th in the nation. They averaged 555.5 total yards per game last year. That was 3rd in the nation. Ole Miss is continuing in that direction. They're going to have a top 25 offense yet again, as long as Corral stays healthy, as long as Corral continues to take care of the football. This offense is scary, and no one wants to go up against them. The defense for Ole Miss is the area that must improve. If the Rebels really want to take a step forward in the SEC, they want to take a step forward on the national stage, they've got to improve defensively because they were terrible last year. They ranked dead last in the SEC in scoring, allowing 38.3 points per game. They ranked last in the SEC in rushing, allowing 206.9 rushing yards per game. They ranked last in the SEC in total defense, allowing 519 yards per game. They have to improve on those marks. You cannot win in the SEC if you don't improve on those marks. But we believe Ole Miss will. Jaquez Jones returns at linebacker as their leading tackler. Sam Williams returns as the leading sack leader, had 4 last year. And A.J. Finley returns in the secondary, had 3 interceptions for the Rebels last year. Their big-time playmakers on defense are mostly back. Practically all of them are back. And the Rebels should see a significant improvement on that side of the ball. And in doing so, could see a significant improvement on their record and competitiveness and placement in the SEC. So let's take a look at their schedule, guys. What is Ole Miss up against? I'll tell you right now, it's a pretty favorable schedule. It's a pretty favorable one. The SEC is tough enough as it is, but they draw Tennessee and Vanderbilt out of the SEC East. Could have been a lot worse. Didn't draw Georgia, didn't draw Florida, didn't draw Missouri. Tennessee and Vanderbilt, too, they draw. They get Texas A&M at home. They get LSU at home. They get Arkansas at home. Things are looking good for Lane Kiffin. They just got to take advantage of it. They open up the year, though, against Louisville in Atlanta. And this is the battle between Louisville's passing defense, Ole Miss's passing offense. Cardinals had the #1 passing defense in the ACC last year, allowing just 189.2 passing yards per game. Like we just mentioned, Ole Miss averaged 344.9 passing yards per game. So which one's going to give? I do believe Louisville's defense gives, but it might not even be their passing defense. It might be their rushing defense. They gave up nearly 180 rushing yards per game. Corral's going to put up big numbers in this game, but so is Jerrion Ealy. Ole Miss's offense simply, I think, is too much for Louisville, and I don't think the Cardinals have the offensive capability to keep up if this becomes a shootout. Mikael Cunningham's back. Tutu Atwell, Des Fitzpatrick, Javian Hawkins, all gone. Ole Miss wins, and they win by double digits. I believe they beat Austin Peay. I believe they beat Tulane. I believe they start 3-0. Louisville's the toughest out of those 3 games. Tulane's offense not too bad, but the Rebels should take care of it in Oxford. They're 3-0 going into their early bye week right before they play Alabama. And what a great time for a bye week. What a great time for a bye week. I mean, yes, early, unfortunately, they're going to have to play 9 straight games to conclude the year, but the bye week comes before the game against Alabama, which is always now intriguing because of the Lane Kiffin-Nick Saban relationship, and the fact that last year Ole Miss dropped 48 points on Alabama. And like we always say, the fact, usually if you drop 48 points on Alabama, you're going to beat the Crimson Tide. But because Ole Miss's defense was so bad, 48 points was not enough. They allowed 63. And I will say that if this game was in Oxford, I might consider picking Ole Miss more for an upset. But Tuscaloosa, I believe Bryant-Denny Stadium is going to play that big a role in this game. Not to mention how much talent Alabama returns, especially on defense. You know that despite the win, Nick Saban has this game circled on his calendar, because allowing 48 points to anyone in his eyes is unacceptable. So yes, hey, we won by 15 points, but we allowed 48. We're not going to allow it to happen this time. Alabama, their defense from top to bottom is stacked. By October 2nd, they'll work out any offensive kinks that they have, especially with the new quarterback in Bryce Young. I believe Alabama and Tuscaloosa does win this game. I believe it's around the same margin here. Ole Miss will put up some points. Ole Miss will put up some yards. But I believe Alabama wins by at least 2 touchdowns. Ole Miss returns home to take on Arkansas. And I will say it's this next probably 3 to 4 game stretch here in conference play that's going to make or break Ole Miss's season. Whether it can be something special and you see significant improvement, or whether they're still mediocre, middle of the pack. It's these games against Arkansas, Tennessee, LSU, and Auburn that are going to be so key for Ole Miss. Well, the game against Arkansas is going to be a big one for Matt Corral. He's looking for redemption. The Rebels lost 33-21 in Fayetteville last year, but Matt Corral threw 6 interceptions. He threw 6 interceptions. Well, I'm here to tell you that I don't think he's going to do that again. Arkansas secondary is no joke. They're very solid, led by one of the best safeties in the country and one of the hardest hitting safeties in the country in Jalen Catalon. But Matt Corral will not throw 6 interceptions in this game. They have home field advantage on their side. I believe Arkansas's defense cracks just a little bit here. I believe the Rebels do beat Arkansas in a game that I think is close, a game that I think has the opportunity to be high scoring because the Razorbacks will have a solid offense of their own with a dangerous dual threat quarterback in KJ Jefferson. But a better performance from Corral and home field advantage at the end of the day is enough for the Rebels. They beat the Hogs, and I think they go on the road and beat Tennessee as well. Josh Heupel is in as the new coach down in Knoxville, but he's got a lot to work with. And by that, I mean he's got a lot of work to do. Doesn't have that much talent. New offensive scheme, very pitiful defense last year. Tennessee is in a very bad state, all thanks to the scandals left behind by Jeremy Pruitt. It's going to take a while for Josh Heupel to fix things for the Volunteers. And despite the game being at Neyland Stadium, I just don't see Tennessee having enough to beat the Rebels, especially since they allowed 265.8 passing yards per game last year, which was 106 in the nation. Ole Miss should go into Tennessee, and I think they win this game by double digits. The biggest game in this 4-game stretch is certainly against LSU. By big, I mean toughest. And Ole Miss benefits, or has the benefit, I guess, of hosting this game, playing LSU in Oxford. Let's keep in mind that last year, Ole Miss only lost to LSU 53-48 in Death Valley. And say what you want, the LSU didn't have their star quarterback in Miles Brennan. Obviously, we knew they were having quarterback issues when he went down with an injury, although I thought Max Johnson filled in very nicely. But like the Arkansas game, Matt Corral had a horrible game, threw 5 interceptions against the Tigers in Death Valley, and yet they still won. And that's what's amazing to me, guys. Think about that. Ole Miss was in that game against Arkansas despite throwing 6 interceptions. Ole Miss was in that game against LSU despite Corral throwing 5 interceptions. And if that doesn't tell you how good this Rebels team is and the potential that they have, I don't know what will. So now Ole Miss hosts LSU. Yes, the Tigers have an elite secondary. Derek Stingley, Eli Ricks. The front 7, phenomenal. Bo Pelini's gone, thank God. We know Miles Brennan should be back, should be fully healthy. Hopefully he will be for this game. But I will say that there is something to be said for home field advantage. I think that's going to be very key. There is something to be said for a better performance from Matt Corral. That's going to be key. And very similar to that Arkansas game, I think Corral gets a little bit of redemption here. Those are the 2 games that I think he really wants to show out for. And I think he does. And I think the Rebels upset LSU in Oxford. Might be a big one because the Tigers could be undefeated at this point. Could be a top 5 team at this point. Well, Ole Miss would be a top 15 team at this point, possibly. Big-time showdown. I believe the Rebels get the best of them. They then travel on the road to Auburn. And this, to me, is that classic trap game, guys. I mean, you're emotional, high off of a win against LSU, a good LSU team, and now you go play Auburn, a team that you lost to by 7 last year, 35-28, and now you're playing them in their house at Jordan-Hare Stadium. You know, and that's going to be probably the toughest road environment they faced since they played in Alabama, since they played in Tuscaloosa, because I'm not too worried about the game at Tennessee. Auburn's going through a coaching change of their own. Brian Harson's in, replacing Gus Malzahn. And I will tell you that from an offensive standpoint, Auburn doesn't have it. Bo Nix doesn't scare me. Matt Corral owns the big edge there. Auburn, I think, does own the rushing edge, though, with Tank Bigsby over Jerrion Ealy. And that's going to be the number you're looking at here, is the fact that Ole Miss had a pitiful rushing defense. Allowed over 200 rushing yards per game last year. If they can't stop Tank Bigsby, Auburn's going to win this game. And I do think the Tigers win this game. Auburn was able to slow down Ole Miss last year, held that high-flying offense to just 28 points and got the win. I think Tank Bigsby has a big day on the Plains. I think Auburn's defense, which returns 9, steps up, slows down Matt Corral, and the Tigers pull off an upset of their own for Brian Harsin. Maybe the signature win for Brian Harsin in 2021, first year with the Tigers, and Ole Miss takes just their 2nd loss of the year. They come into November with a big game against Liberty, the Hugh Freeze Bowl. Hugh Freeze, the head coach at Liberty, but was the former coach at Ole Miss. This is a game that I think everybody has circled on their calendars. Ole Miss does, Liberty does, but every college football fan across the country does. Because not only is it just the Hugh Freeze Bowl, that relationship there, this is a game that could be very, very high scoring, very fast-paced, very exciting. Each of these teams has an electric offense. We already know about Ole Miss, and we know that Liberty averaged 252.4 rushing yards per game and has one of the best quarterbacks in the country in Malik Willis, who can't just beat you through the air but can also beat you on the ground. Scary thing to think about. And a lot of people are picking Liberty to win this game. And I will say this, if Ole Miss's defense does not improve, again, allowed 206.9 rushing yards per game, if their defense does not improve the way we think it will, Liberty will win this game. Because Liberty's defense is solid and their offense is solid. They are balanced on both sides of the ball. So Ole Miss still struggles defensively. I have no doubt that Liberty can win this game. Keep in mind, they beat Virginia Tech on the road last year. They beat Syracuse on the road last year. They almost beat North Carolina State on the road last year. Liberty's afraid of nobody. And they beat Coastal to wrap up 2020. But I do think the Rebels get the best of the Flames here. I do think their defense improves just enough. And I think they contain Malik Willis. That's the key. Contain him and force him to win this game through the air. Force him to win this game in the pocket. I'm not saying he's not capable, but that's not what Hugh Freeze and Liberty want to do. I think Lane Kiffin's defense rises to the occasion, especially with it being at home. They spoil Hugh Freeze's homecoming. They beat the Flames in a big win, potentially top 25 matchup. Ole Miss stays at home and takes on Texas A&M. And again, this kind of goes back to that rushing defense we talked about. We talked about it with Auburn. We talked about it with Liberty. 3 games in a row, Ole Miss is going to face teams that rely on the run, or are very good on the run. A&M no exception with Isaiah Spiller. And this is a game, guys, where A&M could be undefeated at this point. A&M could be just a one-loss team at this point. Only loss coming to Alabama, possibly. They're a team that needs to find their identity offensively outside of Isaiah Spiller. How Haynes King does at quarterback is going to be the major key. But their defense is what they're going to rely on more than anything. The Aggies return 9 starters on defense. DeMarvin Leal up on that defensive line. And an electric secondary. Texas A&M ranked 2nd nationally in stopping the run, only allowed 92 rushing yards per game, which means I don't think Ole Miss gets enough production from Jerrion Ealy in this game. It's going to be Matt Corral or nothing. Matt Corral is going to have to win this game solely through the air. And I think Texas A&M's secondary steps up big in this game because keep in mind the Aggies could still be in the playoff hunt at this point. I think they come on the road to Oxford and beat the Rebels. These 2 teams did not get to play last year, so a little bit of bad blood there, even though it was no one's fault, COVID's fault. But A&M gets the win in Oxford, but it's close. But they do it behind the strength of their defense and the strength of their run game. I believe the Rebels defeat Vanderbilt. They beat them 54-21 last year. Vanderbilt dealing with a brand new head coach in Clark Lee. Does not have the offense to keep up with the Rebels. Doesn't have the offense to even exploit the Rebels. And the defense still has a long way to go. So they beat Vanderbilt on senior night. And then round out their season on Thursday night, Thanksgiving, with the Egg Bowl in Starkville. They beat Mississippi State 31-24 in 2020. And I think it's going to be another close one-possession game between Lane Kiffin and Mike Leach. Last year, Will Rogers from Mississippi State threw for 440 yards against this Rebels defense. But Ole Miss put up 550 yards of offense against this Mississippi State defense. Two brilliant offensive minds in Kiffin and Leach. Kiffin got the best of Leach last year. I think he's going to get the best of Leach again this year. Because here's the thing. We know that all Mississippi State wants to do is air it out. It's that air raid offense. I think Ole Miss hones in on that, is able to slow it down. I think the offensive balance that Ole Miss has ends up being the difference maker here, while I also think their secondary just does a little bit better than Mississippi State in this game. Stopping the air raid offense, the only thing they have to focus on. So offensive balance and a strong secondary does it enough for Ole Miss. They win the Egg Bowl again under Lane Kiffin, narrowly, and we have them finishing the year at 9-3. 9-3 for Ole Miss in the Rebels, guys. Again, and say what you want. Maybe you think it should be worse. I think you could maybe make a case for 8-4. Maybe they fall to Mississippi State. Maybe they fall to LSU. Who knows? But I like this team a lot, guys. We know the offense is going to be solid. They're going to be electric. The only thing, really the biggest thing that dictates Ole Miss's season this year, how it goes, is their defense. Do they take that step forward? Do they improve? I believe that they do. 9-3. Not enough to contend for an SEC title. Probably not enough to get to a New Year's Six bowl game, but both those things are coming very soon. If they continue on this track, they're coming very, very soon for Lane Kiffin in Oxford. So guys, as always, thank you so much for watching us here at The Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos. Check out everything down in that description below too. Sign up for the Expert Picks today before the season starts. Go sign up on Prize Picks as well before the season starts. Both those things down in the description below. And once again, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on The Gridiron Expert.